Everyone told him his shop was a waste of time. And honestly, looking at the inventory, I kind of agreed. No legendary weapons, no S-rank monster cores, not even a decent enchantment scroll in the back corner. Just rows and rows of the most pathetically weak pets anyone had ever seen in the entire history of the tower. A little flame sprite that could barely light a candle. A stone turtle so slow it lost races against actual furniture. A wind moth that sneezed every time someone tried to summon it. These were the kinds of pets that ranked hunters laughed at, the kind that got sold for scrap coin at market day when their owners gave up on them entirely. And here was this one guy, quiet, forgettable, running a tiny shop on the worst floor of the hunter's quarter, selling every single one of them like they were worth something. Nobody bought them, almost nobody. But the few who did, every single one of them came back 6 months later with a look on their face that nobody could explain. Not grateful, not proud, something bigger than that. Something almost like fear, like they had seen something they were not supposed to see. I freeze the first time I notice the pattern, because 3 of the greatest hunters alive right now, people who have cleared floors that no one else has survived, all started their careers with one of his pets, and not one of them ever talked about it. Not once. My name is Kael, and 6 weeks ago I was one of the strongest C-rank hunters in the city. Notice I said was, because I had just come off my biggest win, a solo dungeon clear that should have taken a 5-person party. I walked out with a legendary grade drop, a new title, and a reputation that had other hunters sending me friend requests every hour. I was riding high, which is exactly the kind of moment where the universe decides to remind you that you are not actually that impressive. The guild I had been trying to join for 2 years, the Iron Fangs, top 3 in the entire city, finally reached out. Personal invitation from the vice captain herself. They had watched my dungeon clear footage. They were impressed. I showed up to the evaluation day feeling like I had already won. And then I saw the competition. 27 hunters, all of them C rank or above, all of them looking at me like I was a distraction. One guy had a basilisk pet that was already breathing cold fog into the air just by existing near me. A woman in the back had twin shadow wolves that moved in sync without her even looking at them. Another hunter's fire eagle kept making eye contact with me in a way that felt like a personal threat. Then the evaluator called my name first. I stepped forward. The test was simple. Standard combat drill. Show your pet's capability, your synergy with it, and your situational judgment under pressure. I activated my summoning glyph, and my partner of 3 years, the lightning hawk I had spent every coin upgrading and every day training with, refused to come out. Not a glitch, not a system error. My hawk looked out of the summoning portal, took one long look at the basilisk across the room, and retreated back into its core, in front of everyone. I stood there with a dead glyph and 26 hunters watching me. The basilisk guy actually laughed. The evaluator gave me a polite, professional look that somehow felt worse than the laugh. "You can retry next month," she said. I walked out of that building and kept walking until I hit the edge of the hunter's quarter, and that's when I almost crashed directly into the smallest, most easily ignored shop I had ever seen. No sign out front. Just a board with hand-painted letters that said, Tier 1 Companions, Rare Opportunities for Honest Hunters. The door was cracked open. I do not know why I went in. Maybe I needed to feel better by looking at something worse than my situation. Maybe that's not my most noble moment. But that's what happened. The shop was small, shelves on every wall, small habitats, glass cases, sealed cages, ambient summoning crystals, and inside them, the most genuinely unimpressive collection of pets I had ever seen in my life. A blobfish-looking thing that floated 2 inches off the shelf and occasionally blinked. A tiny rock creature that was literally just sitting there doing absolutely nothing. and had apparently been doing absolutely nothing for 3 days based on the little log note attached to its case. A water serpent so small it could coil inside a coffee cup. A moss deer that kept trying to eat its own habitat, and in the corner, one single ember fox, barely the size of a large house cat. No visible flame, no aura, no intimidation whatsoever. Just a small, warm orange fox that was currently napping with its nose tucked under its tail. I almost left immediately. Then the shopkeeper walked in from the back. Old. Not ancient old, but the kind of old that comes from doing something for a very long time. Calm face, comfortable clothes, no hunter markings, no rank insignia. Not even the low-level rank badge that street vendors wore for credibility. He looked at me for exactly 1 second. "Your partner left you," he said. Not a question. I stared at him. "How did you—" "It happens more than hunters admit," he said, already moving behind the counter. "The bond breaks under pressure, or it never fully formed. Most hunters don't realize how much their pet can sense about them until it becomes a problem at the worst possible moment." He said it with zero judgment, like he was talking about weather. "I'm not here to buy," I said. "That's fine." He started reviewing inventory notes like I wasn't there. I should have left. Instead, I said, "Why does anyone buy from you?" "These are the weakest pets in the city. I've seen children with stronger companions." He didn't look up. "You've seen children with louder companions. That's different." Something about the way he said that made me stay. How is that different? He finally looked at me. Not like I had asked a good question. More like he was deciding whether I was worth the explanation. "Sit down," he said. I sat, and for the next 40 minutes, my entire understanding of how pets worked in this world got quietly taken apart and rebuilt. Here's what he told me. The ranking system for pets, the official one, the one every guild, every hunter association, and every equipment shop used, was designed to measure combat output at the point of purchase. How much damage could a pet do right now? How much HP? How strong was its aura? How many skills was it born with? Loud metrics, visible metrics. What the ranking system did not measure, what nobody officially measured because nobody had figured out how to quantify it, was growth ceiling, bond potential, and what he called foundational attunement. He pulled out a small journal, handwritten notes going back years. "Every pet in this shop," he said, "has an anomalous growth curve. Their starting stats are low, sometimes embarrassingly low, but their ceiling—" He tapped the journal. "I have tracked 31 hunters who purchased from me over 12 years. Want to know how many of them are now S rank or above?" I thought about the hunters I had seen with those insane companions, the ones nobody talked about. "How many?" I asked. 19, he said quietly. "Out of 31. I go completely still. 19 out of 31. The national average for hunters reaching S rank from C rank is less than 2%. The Iron Fangs, with all their resources and training programs and legendary grade equipment, had maybe 4 S rankers on their entire roster. This man, in his small shop with no sign, had 19. "That's impossible," I said. "It's improbable," he said. "There's a difference." I looked back at the ember fox in the corner. It had woken up. It was watching me with calm amber eyes. "What's wrong with that one?" I asked. "Nothing," he said. "Why hasn't it been sold?" "It's waiting," he said. I almost said, "For what?" But the way he was watching me made the answer feel obvious. I told him I could not afford anything, which was true. The dungeon run payment had not cleared yet, and my emergency fund was specifically for emergencies, not for impulse pet purchases in shops with no sign. He told me the fox was mine for whatever I had on me. I had 47 gold in my pocket. He took 45 and told me to keep 2 for food. I left that shop with a fox that could fit in my jacket pocket, who had no visible flame, no rank insignia, and no impressive skills on its status screen. Its only listed ability was called Ember Patience. I looked it up when I got home. Ember Patience. Passive ability. The bond between this pet and its hunter deepens over time. Stat gains are amplified based on accumulated shared experience. Effect scales exponentially with bond level. Exponentially. I sat with that word for a while. My old hawk had been a gifted, powerful partner. Gorgeous skills, high base stats, strong aura. And somewhere along the way, we had stopped growing together. I had been upgrading its equipment, but not its bond. Feeding it premium cores, but not building trust. The hawk had not abandoned me in that evaluation room because it was cowardly. It had abandoned me because it had been carrying someone who never fully showed up for it. That hit me harder than I expected. The fox, I named it Kin, short for Cinder, climbed onto my lap while I was sitting with that realization and did absolutely nothing except sit there and be warm. It was the most comforting thing I had felt in a long time. Okay, now we skip ahead 2 weeks, because 2 weeks later, something happened that changed the entire situation. One of the Iron Fang's hunters found me. Not the vice captain, not the evaluator. One of the actual ranked members, a B-rank named Sevre, known for a dual-element pet dragon that had made him one of the most talked-about hunters in the city 3 years running. He found me at a mid-tier dungeon entrance and immediately started talking like we knew each other. "You're the guy whose hawk left," he said. I had been trying to forget that. "Thanks for the reminder." "I'm not mocking you," he said. "I'm asking, did you go back and get something from the shop in the hunter's quarter, the one with no sign?" I went very still. "Why?" He looked at me like that was confirmation enough. "I got my dragon there," he said quietly. 6 years ago. It was the size of a house cat. No skills worth mentioning. Everyone thought I had lost my mind. His dragon was now the size of a small car, and it had 3 active element types, which was technically impossible according to standard pet biology. "He told you about the growth curves?" I asked. "Showed me his journal," Savory said. "But here's the thing. The part he didn't mention, or maybe he mentioned it and you're about to find out anyway, is that the stronger your companion grows, the more visible you become to things that don't want you to get stronger." I looked at him carefully. "What things?" He glanced around. Not dramatically, just the quick, habitual threat check of someone who had learned to do it automatically. "There are hunters who deal in pets as commodities," he said. "Buyers, brokers, acquisition teams. When someone's pet starts developing at an anomalous rate, stats that shouldn't exist at that rank, evolution paths that break the system's recorded limits, they notice. Who is they? The people who want to control what reaches A rank and above," he said. "The ones who decide which hunters are useful and which hunters are inconvenient." I thought that sounded like paranoia. 3 days later, a man I had never seen before stopped me on the street and offered to buy Sin for 2,000 gold. 2,000 for a pet with no visible rank. I said no without thinking about it. He smiled like that was the answer he expected and walked away. That night, Sin's status screen updated for the first time. Ember Patience Level 2 activated. New passive. Shared Resonance. The hunter's core emotional state transfers ambient energy to the companion's growth pool during rest phases. The stronger the mutual trust, the higher the transfer rate. I read that 3 times. Then I looked at Sin. Sin looked back at me. "We have a problem," I said. Sin sneezed. That was not reassuring. Over the next 2 weeks, I went back to mid-tier dungeons. Not for glory, not for ranking. Just to fight alongside Sin and let the bond build at whatever pace it wanted to build. And here is where I have to be honest with you. It was embarrassing. Other hunters were watching. A few recognized me from the Iron Fang's evaluation disaster. One of them actually said, out loud, while I was walking past, That's the guy whose pet quit on him live and now he's running mid-tiers with a pocket fox. Pocket Fox. That became my nickname for about a week and a half. I kept my head down. Sin kept growing. Not visibly, not in the ways other hunters could see. No dramatic glow-up, no sudden size change, no new aura. But the way we moved through dungeons started to change. I would start to turn right, and Sin was already positioned to cover my left. I would hesitate at a branch in a dungeon corridor, and Sin would take 3 steps down the safer path before I had consciously processed the choice. Once, and I am not exaggerating here, a trap triggered above my head, and Sin was already in the air before I had registered the sound. Not because the fox had fast reflexes, because it had read my body language, my breath, my micro-hesitations well enough to act on information I had not yet consciously processed. That is not a skill you can buy. That is something built between 2 beings over time. My dungeon clear time started dropping, quietly, without any stat change that other hunters could look at and point to. And then came week 4. The man who had offered me 2,000 gold showed up again, except this time there were 3 of them. Same polite professional energy, same smiles that did not reach their eyes. They stopped me outside the dungeon gate at the end of a clear, when I was tired and Sin was resting in my jacket pocket. "We have a better offer," the first man said. "Still no," I said. "The offer is 12,000 gold," said the second. I kept walking. "And if you decline again," said the third, "we'll need to make sure your companion's development doesn't create a market imbalance." I stopped, turned around. "What does that mean?" The first man smiled. "It means there are ways to reset a companion's growth progress, legally and otherwise." That was a threat, delivered with a smile and excellent posture, but absolutely a threat. Here's the thing about me. I am a C-rank hunter. I am good at my job. I am not exceptional. And I was standing alone outside a dungeon gate being directly threatened by people who were clearly connected to something bigger than a street-level pet acquisition operation. I should have been scared. Instead, I got angry, which is not always a strategic response, but it is a very honest one. "You can leave now," I said. They left, but the third one turned back once and said, "Mr. Heron knows about you." And then he was gone. I had no idea who Mr. Heron was. Sever did. When I called him that evening, he went quiet for a full 3 seconds when I said the name. "Heron," he said finally, "runs the largest pet commodities operation in the country, not publicly. On paper, he's a wealthy investor in the hunting industry. But what he actually does is identify high-ceiling companions before they reach maturity, acquire them by whatever means necessary, and sell them at S-rank rates to the highest bidder. And he knows about Sin? If he knows about Sin," Sever said, "then someone has been watching you since before you went into that shop." That was the part that made my stomach drop. Not the threat, not Heron. The idea that someone had been watching me and had somehow known I would end up in that shop. I went back the next morning. The shopkeeper was already open, already reviewing his journal, already looking like he had been expecting me. "Heron," I said. He nodded once. "You knew," I said. "You knew this would happen." He was quiet for a moment. Then he set down the journal. "Every hunter who has bought from me has faced some version of this," he said. "The ones who keep going anyway are the 19. "And the other 12? I asked. He looked at me. "They sold." I sat down heavily. "What happens to the pets that get sold to Heron?" "Their growth is capped," he said simply. "Artificially. There are methods. It prevents them from reaching the development stages that would make them genuinely threatening to the established ranking system. They become expensive accessories, high-level vanity items. Their potential is locked." I thought about Sin sleeping in my jacket pocket. That quiet, warm, steady presence. The way we had started moving together without thinking. The idea of that being locked away and turned into a commodity for someone who wanted control over the ranking system made me feel something I had not felt in a very long time. Protective, not competitive, not ambitious, protective. How do I get out of Heron's sightline? I asked. The shopkeeper looked at me for a long moment. You don't, he said. You get strong enough that removing you becomes a bigger problem than leaving you alone. That was the honest answer. Not the comforting one, the honest one. He slid the journal across the counter toward me. I opened it. 12 years of notes. Development timelines. Growth curves. Bond records. And on the last page, names. 19 names. I recognized 4 of them immediately. 2 were on the top 10 national hunter rankings. 1 ran the most respected guild in the Eastern District. And the 4th was the woman who had publicly dismantled Heron's previous acquisition operation 3 years ago before anyone even knew it existed. She was S rank now. Her pet, according to the journal, had started as a water serpent so small it could coil inside a coffee cup. I looked back at the shelf where that same species sat, currently sleeping in its little habitat. Things started connecting very fast. The shopkeeper was not just selling pets, he was building something. Quietly. Over 12 years, one hunter at a time, finding the people who were willing to go slow, go honest, and build something real instead of buying a shortcut. And those people, with those pets, were becoming the hunters that nobody could buy, nobody could intimidate, and nobody could cap. Why me? I asked. Because your hawk left, he said. I waited. It meant you had hit the ceiling of what you could do through performance and resource accumulation alone. The hawk sensed it before you did. That kind of failure is rare and valuable. Most hunters never get forced to confront it. They just upgrade their way around it and never grow where it actually matters. He picked up his journal again. You were ready, he said, even if you didn't know it yet. I left the shop. Sin was awake now, sitting on my shoulder, watching the street with calm amber eyes. The 2 weeks after that were the most deliberate and the most frightening of my hunting career. Heron's people were visible now. I started noticing them, not confrontational, just present. A face near the dungeon gate, a figure across the street from my apartment building, the quiet pressure of surveillance without direct action. They were waiting to see if I would break. And here is what I found out about myself during those 2 weeks. I don't break quietly. I went back to dungeons. Not mid-tier. I pushed into high B-rank territory, which was above my solo capability on paper. I knew this. I went anyway. Sin's stats were still low by standard metrics. No visible power-up. No new size. No fire breath or dramatic flame aura. But Ember Patience was at level 4 now. And level 4 had unlocked something new on the status screen. Anticipatory Ember. Active skill. For a brief window, the companion can project the hunter's emotional and tactical state forward in time, creating a predictive shield based on the hunter's own instincts and the companion's accumulated understanding of their pattern. I read that once and understood immediately what it meant. Sin could, for a short time, use everything it knew about how I moved and thought to protect me from things I had not yet reacted to. It was not a combat power. It was a bond power, something that could only exist after hundreds of hours of genuine partnership, something that could not be bought at any rank or replicated by a pet with higher base stats. I walked into the first B-rank dungeon, and the difference was immediate. Not because Sin was fighting harder, not because of any flashy new ability, but because I was not afraid. Not the way I had been before. Not that tight performance-based anxiety of needing to prove something before someone decided I was not worth keeping around. I was calm. And because I was calm, I was fast. And because I was fast, I was accurate. And because I was accurate, I was efficient. And because I was efficient, I was finishing rooms in times that did not match my rank at all. On the 3rd day of B-rank runs, Sèvres showed up at the dungeon gate. He looked at my clear time board and raised his eyebrows. You're clearing B4s faster than most B ranks, he said. Sin is helping, I said. He looked at Sin on my shoulder. Still no visible evolution? Nope. Still looks like a pocket fox. Very much so. He nodded slowly. Heron's people have been asking about you around the quarter. I know, I've seen them. He's going to move to direct action soon, Severus said. Once you clear a B-rank dungeon in the top 10 time bracket, you'll be officially documented in the advancement registry. After that, pressure becomes public, and he loses the quiet option. How long do I have? Severus checked his own records. At your current pace? One more good run. I looked at Sin. Sin looked back at me. Okay, I said. Let's do it in one more run. Saver blinked. I was saying you should be careful, not that you should. I know, I'm doing it anyway. He paused, then nodded. I'll be at the gate. Here is what I remember about that run. The dungeon was a B rank 4, named the Ashfield Vault. Boss was a ranked predator called the Vault Warden, a massive armored creature that most B rank parties took 20 minutes to wear down with sustained assault. I went in alone, with a pocket fox. The first 3 floors were fine, fast, clean. The anticipatory shield activated twice on floor 2, when a hidden enemy triggered a trap I had not seen, and both times I was already moving before the strike landed. The 4th floor, I ran into something that was not on the standard dungeon map. A secondary pack, unmapped. 6 mid-tier creatures that moved in coordinated formation. The kind of movement that suggested dungeon mutation, which occasionally happened in high-B environments when a dungeon had been undercleared for too long. 6 of them. Me and a fox. 6 against 1 is not a comfortable ratio at any rank. I felt the spike of fear. And then I felt Sin. Not saw. Felt. That warmth. That specific ember warmth that I had been learning to recognize. It was not reassurance. It was not comfort. It was something more precise than that. It was acknowledgement. Like Kin was saying, I see what you see. I know you are afraid, and I know you know what to do anyway. I breathed out, and then we went to work. Sin's ember aura had grown. Not visibly. It was still not a large fire display. But it had developed a quality that I had noticed over the past weeks. It could now create thermal disruption at close range. Not fire damage, not an attack, just a sudden temperature shift that broke the concentration of opponents using coordinated tactics. 6-pack hunters trying to move in formation hit a thermal pocket they had no framework for responding to. They scattered, and a scattered opponent is a manageable opponent. It took 11 minutes. When I came out, I was tired. There was a burn on my left arm from a too-close call on floor 3, and Sin was asleep immediately on my shoulder. The Ashfield Vault completion board updated. B rank 4, solo. 11 minutes, 58 seconds, top 5 all time. Severus saw it before I did. He was standing at the board with an expression I had never seen from him, somewhere between impressed and alarmed. Heron knows, he said immediately. I know. You're in the registry now. He can't move quietly. I know. What's your plan? I looked at Sin, still asleep, small and warm and completely unimpressive to anyone who had not been watching. I go back to the shop, I said, and I find out who else in this city has been waiting for a pet that the ranking system thinks is worthless. Severus stared at me. You're going to build a counter network. He's been building one for 12 years, I said. He's been doing it alone, one hunter at a time, hoping they were the right kind of person. And you want to speed that up. Heron has acquisition teams and capital and a system that rewards short-term power, I said. But he's been watching this shopkeeper for 12 years, and he still doesn't understand what the man is actually building, because Heron thinks in resources and leverage, and what the shopkeeper has been building can't be bought and can't be leveraged and can't be acquired. Severus was quiet for a long moment. It can be destroyed, he said. That's why we need more people, I said. That evening, I went back to the shop. The shopkeeper was closing up. He looked at me when I came through the door. Top 5, he said. You saw. I check the registry every evening, he said. I looked at the shelves. The blobfish still floating. The rock creature still sitting. The moss deer still trying to eat its habitat. And in the corner, where Sin had been, a new occupant, a small gray bird with no visible wings, just sitting on a perch and occasionally tilting its head. What does that one do? I asked. Patience, he said. It has a lot of patience. I turned to face him. Heron is going to move against you directly now. He has before, the shopkeeper said calmly. What happened? He couldn't prove what I was doing was unusual, he said. All he saw was someone selling low-ranked pets at fair prices. By the time the pets had developed enough to matter, the hunters who owned them were strong enough to make it a complicated problem. He'll try harder this time, I said, because of me. Yes. Then let me help. He looked at me for a long moment, the same look he had given me the first day, deciding whether I was worth the explanation. This time, it felt like a different kind of decision. He went to the back room and came out with something I had not expected. Another journal. Not his. Older. My teacher, he said quietly. Before me. She ran a shop like this in a different city, 20 years before I started. Heron's people found her too. I took the journal carefully. She left notes, he said. Specifically about this situation. About what to do when someone like Heron finally decided the quiet network was a real threat instead of a curiosity. I opened it. The first page was a map, not of a dungeon, of a city. This city, with markings on 17 locations. I looked up. What are these? The shopkeeper was watching me with something that might have been relief. The other shops, he said. I went very still. There are other shops, I said. There are always other shops, he said, in every major hunter city. Quiet places, no signs, bad inventories by standard metrics, and 17 years of watching people build something that Heron's ranking system cannot account for. I looked at the map. 17 shops. Each one, if his journal was right, with its own version of 19 hunters. Not 19 total, 19 each. I did the math. That's... Yes, said the shopkeeper. And right then, Sin woke up on my shoulder. For the first time, there was a visible ember around it. Small. Quiet. Warm. Not a blaze. Not a dramatic flame. Just a light that had been there the whole time, finally ready to be seen. What now? I asked. The shopkeeper picked up his journal, tucked it under his arm, and looked at the door. Now, he said, we stop being quiet.